do we have a name for this yet? I thought if we wanted to be hip and simple, we could do an all lowercase Blazers are cool podcast.
Okay, let's go with that. Welcome, everyone, to the first episode of the Blazers Are Cool podcast with your hosts, Jethro and Brad.
What's up, guys? All right, do you want to get into our quick hits, the things that we liked and things that we don't like about the recent stretch of games?
Yeah, let's do it. Brad, you give me your first quick hitter, one thing you've liked so far during this season.
Yeah, the first thing I really like is how we've been starting to run almost like a no point guard offense. Because I love that we've had like three total ball handlers out there in Ant, Shaedon, and Denny, and a way to kind of throw off their defense, because we don't have that creative of an offense, is we have three guys all taking up the ball on different times. It kind of makes the defense have to be more creative because they don't really know who's always bringing up the ball. Because when Ant's coming up and bringing up the ball half court, it's been very predictable. And to be able to change that where it's Denny, Ant, Shaedon, Scoot, it's opening up the game for everyone and making our offense way more creative. That's the first thing I really like to see in the most recent games.
I agree. It's like they're doing like a too high thing.
Yeah.
A lot of the time, and just letting it move around freely, which I think is awesome. I agree.
Yeah.
I will do this one that kind of leads into it because you didn't mention him. I like Dalano Banton, and I like Dalano Banton's advanced stats. So I don't know if you saw this.
Yeah.
So the stat on Reddit says Dalano Banton still has the highest net rating on the team, plus 10.6. He's also the only Blazer that is net positive.
Wow,
now,
that's awesome.
And so I don't know a ton what goes into net rating. Obviously, it's different than plus minus or whatever.
Yeah.
But it is a stat that is, regarded around the league in a lot of ways.
I'm pretty sure I know what it is. I'm pretty sure is that it is your difference in points per 100 possessions when you're in the game. Right. So it's like if someone has a plus 10 offensive net rating per 100 possessions when he's in the game, we score 10 more points than when he's out of the game. So what I was looking at was his on and off stats. And they also had on cleaning the glass, they have a percentile for each player. Yeah. Like what percentile of the league are they in net rating? Dalano Banton didn't just have the best net rating on the team. He was in the 100th percentile of net rating on and off in the entire league.
It maybe something goes away or it goes down or whatever if he gets shoved in his starting lineup and goes 30 minutes. Like, don't, just because it's the case, give the ball to Dalano Banton every time and jack it up. And I don't think that's what Chauncey's going to do.
Yeah.
But it's just a promising sign to have, again, a guy that we got for literally pennies on the dollar, like at the trade deadline last year, just turn into this. He's just a closer, though. That's all he is.
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
The NBA invented a closer. It's Dalano
The NBA
Banton.
invented the new closer. Yeah. That actually is good because that leads in a little bit. I'm going to be criticized Dalano very slightly in the second thing that I actually like, because he's both the best at what I'm about to say, but also sometimes the worst. I love our ability to go for steals without giving up possessions on defense. And we're able, because we're 10th in steals right now, and I feel like we're really successful at doing that without it being what's the word I'm looking for?
A gamble.
We're not gambling to get our steals, but we're still a very steal heavy team, which is that is what a good defense is. Oklahoma City, when we played them, has been like the perfect example of that. They're first in steals right now, is that they are always going for steals, but it never feels like it's risky. I think we're doing a really good job of that with guys who aren't as, experienced defensively.
Yeah. And it's good because I think it's what you're visually seeing. That's what we're trying to do with the players that we're putting around.
Yeah.
Like lanky. It's what Chauncey's always wanted. He's always been a defensive guy. Like, it feels like we're trying to do that and it's working, which is
exactly.
It didn't just like happen to be this way. I'll say the steals are helpful for this part of what I like, which is specifically Denny Avdia in transition. Has been so much fun to watch him sprint down the court like he gives a fuck.
Oh, it's awesome. And he's like, it's so
refreshing. But we have someone has the handles and the ability to drive to the hoop, who can score or can dish it out. And when he goes, I mean, Chauncey said this the other day. He said he wants him to go as fast as he can, and if people are lagging behind him, it's their fault for not catching up.
When he rebounds, it's like a one-man fast break. We got to catch up with him. And I tell them, if they don't catch you, it's your play. Guys, y'all go catch him.
Just more of that, because the steals to transition is some of the easiest offense you can get in the NBA, and we
Yes.
need as much easy offense and as little half-court offense right at this
Yeah.
moment to win games
Yes.
as we can get.
We have been saying for every year that I've been a fan since I was a kid that this is the season we're going to push the pace.
Mm-hmm.
And because we have a famously slow-paced offense, like in the history of the Trailblazers team. When I last looked a week ago, we were 19th in pace.
Mm-hmm.
To see a guy actually doing it is like, oh my God, like here it is. Because I hate to say this, and this is going to be a brutal throwback. The last guy that gave me hope to do that, and it went horribly, was Raymond Felton. Because we went from Andre Miller, I love him, but kind of famously slow-paced, amazing point guard, to Raymond Felton. It's like, oh, this is the season we're going to do it. We had this one preseason game where we were going so quick. I have memories of like Felton dishing these, despite being humongous, dishing these like corner passes to Batum, who's draining these like transition threes. And we're like, oh my God. And it lasted like a week, which it always does. We push the pace for the first week and it goes away. And even though we're still 19th in pace, I think the more we see Denny, hopefully, I completely agree, the more we're going to see a faster pace. Get into the third thing I like lately, and we've been talking a lot about this, and I want to get this out in the open as quick as we can, is Anfernee's defensive effort.
Yeah.
And I love to see this. I think things are kind of, the tide of how Blazer fans are seeing him defensively is kind of turning a little bit. I think he has that reputation that he kind of rightfully deserves of being a bad defensive player. And this is kind of tough to say after the game against the Mavs, where he had 3 straight possessions where they were purposely to start the second half, the entire offense, and we fell into our first like deficit of the game because it was just the Mavs switching Luka onto Ant every play. Every single play. And there's 3 straight plays where Ant genuinely let Luka like walk to the hoop. But I think there was 2 things with that, which a lot of people were rightfully criticizing him for. But I think the 2 things was that he didn't want to foul because he was already in really bad foul trouble. And that worked out well because he ended up, scoring 24 in that quarter. Yeah. But also I think he was really expecting more help defense from DA in the paint. But instead DA refused to leave Gafford because I think he was worried about the lob potential from Luka to Gafford, which is a good thing to worry about. But it felt like he was sort of using it, or that's kind of an excuse of him to not come out and try to actually guard Luka. Because I think it's better to risk the lob than to let Luka have a wide open layup. So I think that was more of a defensive miscommunication from DA of like, I'm not going to guard the paint for the entire fucking game, which is maddening. Yeah, so those are tough defensive possessions. But other than that, he's been committed to his man, especially on one-on-one defense, has been great. He's been losing guys a lot less on cuts because that I think is Anfernee and definitely Scoot Steele's biggest defensive struggles, losing guys off ball. Ant's been a lot better at that. He's staying committed to his man. He's contesting on shots. I think defense at the point guard position is the least important one. It's more important that you're just not a liability. So even though I don't think he's like Drew Holiday, obviously, I think this season officially he hasn't been a liability, which is all we want to see. And I think the stat that he has the best defensive rating on the team really backs that up, because that's another tough stat to use for an individual player because it depends on what lineups you're in. But if he has the best defensive rating on the team, it shows at the worst, he's not making our good defensive lineups bad. You know what I mean? He can be in the game and we can still have a top 5 defensive rating.
I like that you bring up the defensive drop and the lack of help from Ayton. So here's my last thing I like, and then I'm going to go into my thing that I don't like.
Yeah, of course.
What I like is Deandre Ayton when he looks like he gives a fuck.
Oh, yeah.
And it's tough to find, to put it nicely.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
When he's involved in a play and has these guys one-on-one, or it's a time when he feels like he can try on defense, he's in their face. He gets good hands up. He can get a block here and there. Like, it looks good. And then you look at the other end and he gets this mid-range shot and you just know it goes in.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's unbelievable. And it's, that's what he wants to do. When it's the things that he likes to do and that he knows he's good at, he's so good at them.
I think it's the one shot on the team that, because we all remember, Dame's pull-up threes, LaMarcus's fadeaways, even, honestly, Wesley Matthews' spot-up threes when he was with the team. There's certain shots that you see being taken, you're like, oh, it's going in. It's a guarantee. DA, I think, is the only guy on the team right now who I think has a guaranteed, oh, that's good.
That's going good. In. Now, I'll transition us into things we don't like, because my first thing is Ayton when he doesn't try.
Nice.
And that is almost all of the time.
Yeah.
It is so frustrating when I decide to take a minute and a half of my time watching the Blazers to just look at what DeAndre Ayton is doing because he is walking up the court, or he does a good fake run, when you're like not actually trying to move fast, but you like kind of look like you're running because you like pumping the arms, you're lifting the legs up. Like, he's good at that. He never closes out well. He really isn't. He's never boxing out. It's all the fundamentals that he's just lacking. And I'm sure Chauncey will be the first person to rage about it if he was ever put in a situation to. I'm sure Chauncey with his boys or his wife is just completely flaming the hell out of DeAndre Ayton.
And for effort, here's the thing. I think you're going to agree with this. When it comes to effort, I think it's effort to do things that he doesn't want to do physically, which usually almost always is things that involves making contact.
Yeah.
Setting screens, like you said, boxing out, which I think I've noticed way more these last few games. Because I'm going to get into the first thing that I don't like, and because just so you know, for people watching this, I didn't know we don't know what each other's going to say. We didn't pre-plan this before with what we're going to like. The first thing that I do not like is that I think Ayton is trying hard enough lately that we might not trade him. So I love these. What you like his effort, which I agree. Yeah. I don't like it because I think he's going to trick us. I said this about Ayton is that he's the kind of guy, I said this last year too when he went on that tear at the end, is that he's the kind of guy who only seems like he's a net positive when he puts up 25 points.
Yeah.
And if he's not doing that, which you don't want DeAndre Ayton to be your guy putting up 25 a game.
Right.
You want him to be your guy who puts up 18 a game and hopefully, does the things that a center needs to do. And even when his effort goes up, you can still tell he doesn't want to get physical and do those things that are really important for the team to do to win. So that's but I'm worried that his obvious effort that he's going to put together some 24 and 12 games and we're going to say no, maybe we shouldn't get rid of him. And that's going to
and that's going to bite us in the ass. My second and final dislike is just injuries are starting to rear its ugly head again.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it's something that we can't really control, but some of them are starting to, the Scoot injury is mildly concerning to me.
Yeah.
Donovan Clingan getting hurt at any point with how we've been, with our center luck in history concerns me. But I think to bottom out again and to just start at this point in the season and people just get injured, momentum has to start building now. And I feel like we're actually getting that.
Yeah.
For players, especially ones that we're so keen on with Scoot Henderson and Donovan Clingan, to start missing games and have to try new rotations and put people in. I just am praying that we can get everyone we want together and just play this season how we want to play it.
Yes, absolutely. I'm okay with finishing last, or that should come from unfortunate roster decisions or, bad coaching where this should come from injuries and front offices because we've heard confirmed by Ant and Dame that the front office has done hey man, sit out the last 10 games things, which I don't think that's fine for maybe a year, maybe two, but we're on year.
We've already cashed those 2 years.
Exactly. So I don't want to see it sucks. You're right. You're absolutely right. I don't want to see the injuries ruin what could be now an important developmental part of the season.
Right.
You're absolutely
right.
The next thing that I don't like, this is really quick, and I think you can agree with this, is our 5-out offense. Yeah. We were watching that Grizzlies game together, and we haven't seen it that often. We've probably seen it for consistent minutes 3 or 4 times this year because we don't have that many shooters. Mm-hmm. We've had plenty of games where we've ran 5 guys who would our wings, but we're getting our threes and getting our offense more in transition and using that length on defense and disrupt and then push the pace and get transition or faster pace offense points. Our half court 5-out offense is the worst offense I have ever seen as a Blazer fan. And I truly mean that. That one quarter against the Grizzlies that we saw was the perfect example of that, where it was hideous, it was painful and joyless, and I never, ever want to see it again. And the last thing that I don't like, and this is going to be controversial, I don't like what Shaedon is showing on anything but the offensive side of the ball. And by offensive side of the ball, I mean basically from shooting and off the dribble scoring. I think he deserves the critique that we've been seeing Anfernee and some other guys get for their defensive effort. I think he is still easily the worst defensive player playing on the team right now. I think he's constantly getting beat off the dribble. He's constantly losing guys who are, cutting or off ball. He shows random bursts of a lot of hustle and a lot of energy, which is awesome, but not consistent enough.
I will admit to not having focused on him on defense so much, and that's probably kind of that Hive mindset of like, it's Shaedon, he has the highest ceiling. I don't see, don't tell kind of. I will definitely admit though that I've never, for how athletic he is, he doesn't block very much.
No.
I've never kind of like,
or even contest that much.
Right.
Yeah.
Like I can't think of a time in my head at this moment where I'm like, damn, Shaedon made that good defensive play. Damn, Shaedon made that. He did like have that one at the end of the Mavs game where he like was dove on the ground and threw it away. Like that
was
like,
awesome. That's what I was talking about. Those random bursts.
There's some heart there, and then maybe it takes more of those crunch time, adrenaline fueled situations to bring it out of him.
You're absolutely right. Because sorry to interrupt you, but do you remember his block at the end of that? I think it was against the Suns last year, where there was a corner. I was actually at this game. The Suns.
It was the Grizzlies in the in-season. Yes. And that was when his hype peaked last year, and then he got injured.
And you're like, oh, he can do things like that.
He can do that.
Yeah. For our next part of the show, our next segment, we're gonna get into what we're calling the Great Debate.
It's gonna be great. It's gonna be a debate.
It's gonna be really good. It's gonna be a great debate.
Yeah.
So what is your question of the day?
So and it's part of the problem with the NBA in general, but all anyone likes to talk about is roster construction, trades, who should be where, who fits with each other. On the Blazers, what is so prevalent about that are the three old heads, essentially, that we have in the room in Deandre Ayton, who's 26, Anfernee Simons, who's 25, and then Jerami Grant is 30 some odd, 31.
Is he 30 yet?
I think he's 30.
He might be 29. I might be completely wrong about that.
He's 30 on the dot. A lot of people think that there's not a big market for a lot of these guys.
Yeah.
I think the savvy thing, like if you're a cool Blazer fan, like you get the NBA. You like to say that these guys have no value anyway. Like Anfernee Simons, who's going to take him?
Yeah.
Deandre Ayton, who wants him, right?
Yeah.
So there's been a lot of people who are saying, okay, let's just get rid of these guys for nothing because they're harshing the development of Klingon in the case of Ayton, of Scoot in the case of Simons, of our wings, Tumani, Shaedon in the case of Jerami Grant. So my question to you is, if one of them had to just disappear from the roster completely, who would you choose?
That's such a good question, because like you said, that's a different question than like, who do you want to trade?
Right.
Oh my gosh, dude. And this even a couple of weeks ago I would have said unquestionably DA.
Mm-hmm.
But there's two things. One, he's tricking me. However, and this is purely off the need of having bigs are always the fact that we have three big men who are serviceable in DA, Rob Will, and Klingon. Like right now, we're seeing the perfect example of why that's so important. We have DA and Rob Will, who are more than likely every season of their career are going to miss some time.
Mm-hmm.
Ayton is one of the only big men in the NBA, and this is because of his main fault of refusing to take hits, boxing out, screening, anything like that. He's the only 7-footer in the history of the NBA who has ever been consistently healthy.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? He's rarely hurt unless it's icy out or
his finger. That's literally all. The only reason he's missed game the past 2 years is, ow, I have a boo-boo on my finger.
Yeah.
And ooh, it's cold.
Oh, it's cold.
Well, so
Jerami.
Let me say it because I think I see where you're going. Let me say why it's not Anfernee.
Sure.
I think we're both in agreement on this. He is the face of our team. I know Scoot is like kind of the face because we drafted him third, but like if I'm putting someone as the captain of this team, of the, when they do the NBA previews and they put someone's face up as the thing, it's Anfernee Simons.
If you look at how teams plan for us, it's Anfernee Simons.
And you can't just throw Anfernee Simons away like I've heard Blazer fans say to my face for nothing. And I will admit that those intrusive thoughts have gone to my head. Like,
absolutely.
We just got to get rid of him now, blah, blah, blah. You can't just throw him away because he's not as good as you're hoping he could be, and because you think that Scoot is going to become the next big thing. You can't. There's not enough there to bank on that.
You're absolutely right.
And he's too high value. So to get to the question, I think we both agree it is not Anfernee Simons.
I 100% agree. Well, because once again, we are proven every week that at the end of the day, we have basically no idea what we're talking about.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because I've been so sure on Ant, and then I finally, after the game before the Pacers game when he had like 30 or whatever, I was like, oh, I think after, a year and a half of defending, I think I might be wrong. Then he has that Pacers game. He had the Kings game. He had the Mavs game. It's like, oh, wait. No, I'm back and forth proven wrong in both ways all the time. So I hope I'm right about this, but I still think we've seen way more good basketball from Anthony. We haven't. Jerami, I have seen from a lot of Blazer fans on Twitter and on Reddit that people see him as now that he isn't, the primary scorer, he's been a great defender and he's showing he can be a better playmaker. I want to push back on that a little bit because I think one, he's been a fine defender. I think now that he's not being used as basically Tumani's role of guarding the best player, and he's able just to kind of be like that connective space defender, he looks fine. He looks good. Probably is a net positive on defense because he can use his length well. But he's still not, I don't think, an elite defender. His shooting is way down this year, which you think it wouldn't be if he's being used more as a spot-up shooter. He's shooting 38% and 35% from three, which is way down from last year. And as a playmaker, his assists are way up, but you don't want him to have the ball over Denny, Shaedon, or Scoot or Ant. To me, clearly, Denny is a really, really important part of this team. He's still only 23. Yeah. I usually hate this guy's taking minutes from this guy because it's but he's good. And it's starting to feel like Jerami's taking minutes from Denny out of having that reputation and role.
Over being old.
Yes, exactly. Not out of positive impact. Because last year, he was getting those minutes because he was the best player on the team.
Right.
Now it feels like it's because of trade value and reputation and what he's kind of, I guess, owed as opposed to their actual impact. Jerami's a better player than DA, but DA is a rare commodity that we need, I think, right now more than Jerami. Yes, so that's where it's really tough.
I think I completely agree.
So it could go both ways. I don't know.
And then the last thing I'll say is that the contract is probably the biggest thing.
Yeah.
And that Jerami being around for 3 more years, if we're having this discussion, him having that much more time as we're talking about it is kind of a bad thing.
Yeah.
All right, to close it out, as we're going through the next couple games, Brad, what going forward are you hopeful about and what are you frightened of?
What I'm hopeful for, and because, we talked a lot about Denny, I am hopeful for as much Denny-centered Blazers as we can get. And because he has been – because I think you remember me saying this at the beginning of the season, but my take was I think by the end of the season, we're going to see him as our best player. Because he's 23, super talented on both ends. I know he was a stud defender who finally got the opportunity to be a good offensive player. And he proved me wrong incredibly for the first 12 games of the season, but the last 8 have been awesome. And I think he's gaining confidence because, again, he's only 23. He's on a new team. And every minute he is in the game is so much more exciting. There's more. Mm-hmm. He's a great, like you said, fast break starter. He pushes the tempo. He's also just a great passer, both as the primary playmaker, but also as a secondary, connective piece.
Right.
It makes our offense look so much more creative when he's in. But also while still being probably our second best defender. Since Klingon's out, probably our second best defender to Tumani. So I'm excited to see as much more Denny-centered offense and defense. I want to see him get 30-plus minutes because he's been around 28. I want to see him get 32 to 36 minutes, at least for one of these games. It's going to be tough with Jerami still playing, which is, I like Jerami a lot, but I want to see as much Denny as possible.
I'm excited to see, and it's related to the Denny passing thing, and we've been talking about this a lot, is more off-ball Anfernee Simons. I think when Scoot comes back, he's really got to lock into that because that's the only way those two can work together. Yeah. It is be assertive when he has the ball, but be okay to let Denny have the ball, to let Scoot have the ball, and just find a way to just exist. This offense feels like it has so much flow right now
Yeah.
with these lengthy guards who all kind of play the same.
Yes.
And I want him to be like that. I don't want him to be so heliocentric. I want his shooting to speak for itself.
Absolutely.
And to be that gravity.
Oh, I love that.
You know?
You're absolutely right. What's the one thing that what are you frightened about? What are you terrified to see?
So, it's just what you're talking about, what you were saying with Scoot. It's when he comes back, all the good things we just laid out about what is working with Ant and what is working with this offense.
Yeah.
Multiple ball handlers,
Yeah.
spreading it around, good 3-point shooting
And length.
And length, is that when Scoot gets back, this pick and roll dominant, one man at the top of the key offense that has been clunky.
Yes.
And not working and not opening up the resources that we have on this team comes back. I think there's a world where Scoot can fit into what this stuff we're doing.
Agreed. That Indiana game was maybe Scoot's best game, and he played more off ball than I think we've ever seen him play. And he went 3 of 4 from 3. But you're absolutely right that is something to look for, to see how Scoot fits into this more no real point guard offense. Yes,
when he's such a point guard.
Exactly. Absolutely.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
All right, what are you frightened of going forward?
This is what I'm frightened of, because I feel like I'm complaining about Shaedon a bit, and I'm going to keep on doing it. What I'm frightened about is that when Anfernee is out of the game, Shaedon becomes kind of a dead ball offensive player. We saw it like when I think in the beginning of the third quarter, or maybe it was when Ant fouled out in the fourth. I can't quite remember, but there was like 4 minutes where Shaedon brought up the ball, either worked off the dribble or got a screen, and that was the entire offense.
Yeah.
And when Ant's in the game, we don't see that at all. We see, like we've been talking about, like our first creative and fun offenses we've seen in a while. But I feel like for whatever, I don't know if this is a Chauncey decision or if it's a Shaedon decision or a little bit of both. But I want to see as little ISO Shaedon ball as possible, because I don't think it's good for him. I think it's good maybe late in games when we need that kind of shot, because he's shown in that like Atlanta game and the one before that, when he had those 2 back-to-back 30-point games, that he can do that in the clutch. But you don't want to see that in the third quarter. You don't want to see a third quarter, and that's how we kind of fell into one of our multiple deficits of the game, was it became Shaedon-centric ball.
I don't think Shaedon should really ever be bringing the ball up the court.
Yeah.
At least if Anfernee, Dalano, or Scoot are on the court with him. And probably one of those three should be on the court. Yeah, and Denny should be on the court with him at all times.
Right,
and if you include Denny, at least like 2, honestly. So
yeah, absolutely.
So
nice.
We'll keep watching. Blazers keep going.
Blazers are cool.
Blazers are cool.
They are cool.
We're fun.